Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Claims Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Lindsay Gross, and I'm joined by someone who continues to make big strides in revenue cycle management, Kari Sewell. She's currently a vice president at Optum and has led large, complex teams across healthcare organizations. We're diving into a topic that doesn't get enough attention, what it actually takes to build and scale high performing RCM teams. Kari, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Lindsay. Happy to be
Yeah,
here.
yeah, I'm so thrilled to have you on. So let's get into your background and leadership journey for the listeners. You've held leadership roles in some pretty large and complex organizations. Can you walk us
Yep.
through your journey and how you found yourself in the world of revenue cycle?
Yeah. My background and my journey probably starts like all of our background and journey in revenue cycle. We didn't set out to join revenue cycle. We ended up in it. In fact, I was actually getting ready to, apply for law schools. I had already taken the LSAT. I was working for a local attorney here in St. Louis and sat down with him and said, where should I apply to? Could I get a letter of recommendation? What are your thoughts? And he gave me the best advice I think I've ever had. And he said, don't do it, find something else because the market is saturated. You're going to set out to have these big aspirations and it's probably not going to happen. And he said, I would, if I had to do it all over again, I would do it all over again. And that's always been the best piece of
Wow.
advice that I've ever had because I never would have taken that leap to then start over in my career. I mean, I had just gone through 6 months of LSAT training, taken the LSAT, and then dabbled into, right, I'm going to go find a new job. And that's where I started, at a local billing company here in St. Louis. And, I was boots on the ground, frontline staff. It was AR follow-up, calling the payers, checking my paper ATBs every week and working the claims. I mean, it was a great industry to get into. And it was an industry where I felt like I could not only be myself, but I could also challenge myself in ways that I don't think I would have been challenged. And that's how it all started, essentially. So I started working my way from accounts receivable into client management, into supervising accounts receivable. And then when I got into a larger organization that's here local in St. Louis, my boss jokingly dubbed me like the interim everything because as soon as somebody had a gap or as soon as we had, a manager get promoted or leave, I was always like, give it to me. I'll take it on as my responsibilities. I did everything from, accounts receivable, billing, follow cash posting, like reg ops, the support team. I mean, I did everything. I dabbled in self-pay. So it was always wanting to learn and always wanting to understand how we all connected so that we can work together. I mean, it was a cohesive family.
Yeah, I love that, and I don't think I knew that about you. I think I remember some of that,
Yeah.
but that's so interesting. So you set out to potentially be a lawyer, worked for a law firm, and they
Yeah.
said, no, stop, go back, don't go down this path, do something else. That's
Yeah.
wild. I think it probably couldn't have worked out any better for you. It's funny, as you said, how many of us didn't start out in RCM or ever think that we
No.
would build careers out of revenue cycle management and just found our way in it and stayed. And I always like to say, once you're in, you're in. I think
Yeah.
you're a lifer.
Mhm.
Because it is so complex and it's in such high demand because it's so complicated. It's hard to get out of it once you're in it.
And it's challenging and it's rewarding. I mean, this is one area where you can truly see the fruits of your labor. When you track and you trend, you can see that needle move up and you can see it move down, and then you realize, okay, I have to pivot. It's a journey that takes you on a long journey, but it's also short steps in that long journey.
Yeah, no, for sure. And celebrating the wins with your team.
Yeah.
You're right. It is so rewarding and keeps you wanting more.
Yeah.
And so along those same lines, what's been the biggest surprise for you as you've moved into higher leadership roles that maybe no one prepared you for?
Yeah, this one, no one prepares you for anything really in any corporate world. But I think my biggest aha moment moving up in the ladder was leadership doesn't know everything and doesn't always have the answers. And that's not a negative comment. Like, we should always be learning. We should always be adapting. And I kept finding myself applying for these positions going, there's no way I'm going to get this. I'm only 8 or 9 years in. These people that I'm going up against have bigger resumes. They have a long-standing tenure, and I don't necessarily have that long-standing tenure. But what I had that was different than other people was the drive. I mean, my work ethic and my passion for making not only myself successful, but my team successful. I'm a team player, and I'm a competitive team player.
Yeah. And I think that's the recipe for success in any role, probably in any organization. I think a lot of us go into leadership thinking it's mostly about setting direction and then quickly realizing it's also a lot of emotional labor. Sometimes it's not the technical part so much, but managing expectations or personalities. It can be challenging in many different ways.
It is. Yeah. And that's the fun part is you get to not only lead, but you get to mentor. And then you also, while you're mentoring, you learn too, because if we're not in healthcare, if we're not adapting and if we're not changing the way that we're looking at things or doing things, we'll always be reactive. We're not being proactive.
And that's really where the innovation, is born, paying attention to all of those things. And, so talking about teams and what makes high performing teams work, when you think about the best teams that you've led or worked with, what stands out? What are the most common threads?
I think the most common threads, it all boils down to two aspects for me: unity and transparency. I was a collegiate soccer player. I was on the soccer field for most of my life. And when I think about my career and I think about playing soccer, you have goals and you have objectives to get to. If your team is not aware of those goals and those objectives, you're moving down the field in the wrong direction. And if you're not a unit and you're not together moving forward, we're always going to be reactive, right? So if your frontline staff are all on the same page as your leadership and your supervisors and your middle staff, we're going to be moving cohesively. If we're not understanding of what our goals are, how we're getting to our goals, and if we're just always saying, this is what we have to do, that's it, no end, no discussion, nobody's going to be aware of how we get there. You don't draw a line in the sand but not tell them how to get to that line in the sand or to the end. You have to be willing to put in the work to make people understand objectives. And you have to be willing to put in the work to make leaders understand how the frontline staff should understand objectives too. Revenue cycle metrics are really kind of the same as when you're trying to accomplish on the soccer field, right? Like, if you're always pointing out opportunities, here's where we can score. If you're pointing out opportunities, here's where we have a delay in cash. You're able to execute that and you're able to mitigate things down the road that may hurt you down the road. And really, I think unity is probably the best thing that will get us there. Too many times we create silos within our own organization.
Easy to do. Yeah.
Yeah, it's easy to do. You have domestic staff, you have global staff, you have vendors. You have to treat everyone the same as if they're an extension of your own team, no matter where they sit, no matter
100%.
Who has their paycheck. It's relative to being transparent, and it's relative to being a united front. And I think that is what makes a high performing team the best team to have, because if they're not understanding of how they're going to get to the end goal, we're never going to get to the end.
Clarity, transparency, getting everyone on the same page. I've noticed, the best teams, they don't just react, they're also proactive and accountable. And there's this natural sense of ownership, which is also great to see when you have teams and you're building teams. Some people just come to the table with those things, which is nice because not everyone does. But you're right. It also helps to have certain things in place to help everyone understand what the objective is.
And I think transparency is a big part of that, right? When teams hear about automation or AI, the easy part of that is to go, a robot's going to take my job. And that's not the case. We will always need people doing tasks. We will always need people calling the payers, collecting, and that is never going to be taken away from us. But let the AI and let the bots do the things that we don't need to do, right? If we're always hyper focused on productivity, that's what we're going to get. We're only going to get productivity. But if we're hyper focused on what is our collection rate, what's our resolution touches, it starts to turn that needle, and people will start going, you know what? I had 7 adjustments hit my work queue and I don't want to work these 7 adjustments. Let's get a bot to do this. And they no longer become afraid of bots, and they want that to help them, because then their resolution score is going down because they're not getting accounts that truly need resolution driven activities.
Absolutely. And it's leaning into the tools that are there to help support, and you're right, not replace, but help support our team so that we're really doing the meaningful work and producing real and measurable results. And, so we both know that in RCM, you can have smart people and still struggle to get results. What's the difference maker when it comes to building a high performing team, and not just a capable one?
Yeah. I mean, it's understanding our goals. If we're not in tune with what drives our days in AR, if we're not in tune with what drives our AR over 90, or, if we're just delaying a task by 30 days and we don't realize that that's causing our metrics to move in not a way that we don't want it to see, then we're going to always get those activities that people feel like, well, this is just a little activity. I'm not really affecting it in any sort of way, right? It is affecting it. And I don't think if we make that visible, they're going to start understanding, well, I don't want this to wait 30 days now. I want it to wait 5 days. And now we have escalation pathways in place that we've never had before. And you have to understand, we got to look at the big picture, not just claim by claim, right? So having those conversations of what we are doing that people subjectively think are just minute, right? But in the big picture of things, it's causing delays that we're not expecting, or it's causing issues that are affecting us negatively, when really that's not the case.
Yeah. And, I think too, and you kind of touched on this before, it's the why behind whatever those tasks are for the broader goals of the organization, explaining to your team why they're doing it in the first place. I think, those teams that understand the why tend to outperform rather than just chasing those metrics.
Agreed. And you'll always have people on different levels, and they'll be able to showcase their skill. And there are people very comfortable doing the monotonous tasks. And that's great. We need that even then. But we have to have that visibility into, here's what we're doing and here's the results it's driving. Because if we're not being transparent and we're not giving those results back, then we're not giving them a chance to even drive better results. And I think that's the part about being transparent, is we shouldn't look at metrics monthly. We shouldn't look at metrics quarterly. We should be looking at it week over week, day over day. And there's some that aren't going to move every day, but there's some that we can influence every day to say, hey, we're getting cash, right? If things get pushed out 5 days, 10 days, before you know it, it's going to cross month end. And we were forecasting that cash to come in. And now we have to explain why cash might be at a miss or lower than what we expected. And that's being visible with how leaders are looking at it, all the way down to the frontline staff in every department, because everything ticks and ties in revenue cycle. And if they're not aware of the tasks that they're doing and how it's impacting the overall organization,
exactly.
Then, we're getting lost in just the task mining.
Exactly. Let's talk a little bit about hiring and training and culture. What do you look for when you're hiring someone into an RCM team? Are there traits or qualities that matter more than expertise?
I would say, the trait you look for the most in revenue cycle, you have to be a problem solver. You're not going to sit idle. You're not going to sit and wonder, what am I going to do next? Am I bored? That's not the industry for us. We're all very vocal in revenue cycle. We don't want to be bored. Sitting idle is not for us. In fact, it's fast paced, right? Like, we understand it's fast paced. It's day to day. What we do today, we may do differently tomorrow. And we have to be evolving. So being a problem solver, somebody that has a great work ethic to say, you know what, this doesn't look right to me. I need to go investigate this more, rather than passing it off to somebody else. Kind of doing that legwork of, this is what they said, and this is what I pushed on them, and this is the result I got. Now what? And you have to build your training even for that, because the subjectivity there of somebody just taking that extra step may not always be there, but you have to push for them to say that. And if we just pass it off and let somebody else answer it, we're just going to keep going back and forth. And then before you know it, that's when we have delays. You really have to be a great problem solver, an independent worker at times, but also a great team collaboration, because there's going to be cross collaboration that we need to give feedback on, and then work together. Because if you can't understand where that lump in the snake happened in revenue cycle and get it back to that appropriate department, then we're not fixing anything upstream.
Yeah. And I think a lot of what you just said comes down to how curious are you? Curiosity and grit go a long way in RCM. Expertise is great, but you can teach systems. You really can't teach mindset. So be curious. It's interesting how some of the best, at least for me personally, RCM people I've worked with had zero healthcare expertise at first. What is your approach to onboarding and training, especially in remote and hybrid environments? How do you build connection and accountability from day one?
In a remote environment, it offers us more opportunities to train in a way that we never trained probably when we were in person. But too many opportunities leave for error as well. Our approach and my approach has always been one model doesn't fit all. One size does not fit all. And we have to always look at how we're training and be just as adaptable as operations. Training is a branch of operations. And if we're not getting those people the accurate training or the tools that they need right from the get-go, then we're behind the curve ball. We're being reactive and not proactive. So assessing how people are coming in, do Quizlets through that time, is what they're getting trained on sticking. And Quizlets have been great so far, right? You put 4 or 5 Quizlets out, and it's a real test of, is the information that we're passing on getting absorbed and understood? And then if you have to retrain, it's okay to retrain. You just have to understand how people learn. Are they more visual? And that's where you have to really use the tools that we have, right? We get on video calls. We do, chair sides via video. And that has been great. Now, there are people probably that learn better now because you're not literally sitting chair side anymore, in someone's cubicle looking over someone's shoulder, whereas you're seeing them click around, move around, and it's a better opportunity. But that has been something I think remote has given us a better opportunity for, is, we can be face to face, but we don't have to be on top of each other. And then using those Quizlets to then see how are they absorbing this? Is it something that we either missed the mark on training, or is it something that we need to go back and retrain because it wasn't clear enough to this person? And then regular check-ins. We should always have regular check-ins. During the ramp up period, we should always have huddles. They need to be integrated into our team one-on-one. How's it going? The feedback, just to understand, we don't want to leave anybody to hang out to dry. That's not what we want here. And people truly want to be successful in what they do. But we have to give them an opportunity to let us know either what was missed on the mark or where they may need some additional training.
I do think that, not everyone retains information at the same rate. Not everyone has the ability to absorb information in the same way. And so giving people different outlets to learn very complex skills, and then being able to adapt your training protocol to allow for the hybrid, remote work environment also probably helps open up the candidate pool. Now you're not just looking locally. There's probably great local talent, but you're able to open that up a bit and look outside of your geographic region and pull in truly the people that you need to help move those needles. RCM, as we know, isn't always the cool part of healthcare. How do you create a culture that keeps people engaged and invested in the work they're doing?
Revenue cycle people, we're not quiet, right? Like, we are not, sit here and let's be quiet. We know we have a loud voice. We want to be heard. And I think that is where we have to really rely on our touch bases to understand, what are barriers that people are finding, people are coming across, and how are we going to get these barriers out of people's way, whether it's, system flags, issues, they may not be versed in Excel, but they want to be, and they want to learn so that they can do their own investigating. How do we equip them either with the right tools and then fix it for them? People can come to us with, troubles and trends and issues, but if we don't do anything with it, it stops. And that's not the culture we want to create. We should always be learning from what we're seeing in the inventory, always learning from what we're seeing from the payers. And we won't get that unless we talk with our frontline staff. It gets us away from doing these reactive deep dives, these reactive analysis.
Yeah.
If we're not connecting one-on-one and we're not connecting in a group setting to say, what are you seeing? And then it sparks another memory. Oh, you know what? This is what I'm seeing too. And
Yeah.
it's all about the connection and the communication.
Engaging with your team. It's amazing when you engage and really listen to their pain points. I remember there were so many complaints coming out of this particular department about a specific part of the workflow. And you hear it, and then finally you stop and say, okay, I'm going to actually put eyes on this process myself. Something's wrong. You sit down and you spend time with them and you engage and you think to yourself, wow, it's amazing they got anything done in the first place. This is so manual. And then you help them figure it out, whether it be through tools or, just simply a better process for that particular task. So no, you're absolutely right. Engage with your team and connect with them. They will perform better.
And recognize, if we make small wins turn into big wins. And if they see that we have overcome a challenge, we should recognize that no matter how big or how small, because then the fruits of the labor feel rewarded.
Yeah.
And I know I personally feel that way. I know other people
sure.
do too. They want to know that what they're doing is actually helping the patient. It's improving the patient experience. That's what we're all setting out to do.
That's right. Improving the patient experience and making revenue cycle a little less complicated. And we all know just how complicated it is. How, in terms of leading, how do you approach feedback and coaching when you're managing large teams?
Consistency is key, but coaching is also not a one size fits all model. You have to understand your team. You have to be engaged with your team, and you have to really understand how people not only hear feedback, but want to know their feedback. And it's not that, oh, I don't want to ever hear my feedback. Don't tell me anything. We have to approach it in a way that they're going to be receptive and not just shut down.
Yeah.
And that's where you have to really build a relationship with not only your direct reports, but your 2 levels down, your 3 levels down. And you can do that by doing skip levels, doing quarterly touch-ins, hosting all department meetings, even town halls where you get to let them ask questions. And no matter how big or how small they may be, it's the fact that you're building a connection or a relationship that you may not have normally built in a remote environment now, because you don't get to just walk around the building and say hello and, have water cooler talk, but you have to do it in a way that you're engaging and building a relationship.
I think giving feedback is a special skill. Also, receiving feedback is a special skill, but giving it is. You want to make sure that the person on the other end is receiving it in such a way where they want to make the necessary improvements so that the team and the organization functions and flows better. And it's hard to get to the place where everyone operating on all cylinders every day of the week, because people also have real lives. They have other things going on. So keeping them engaged while giving them feedback and then keeping morale up, it's a juggling act. So leadership is, it can be tough. It is tough, but it can be very tough. Kari, has your leadership style changed over the years? And if so, how?
Probably going to change even from where I'm at today. And it's all about building relationships and, finding a mentor and finding kind of your niche of how you're receiving feedback, but also, again, how you're giving feedback. It should never be a straight line path and no evolvement. And one of the things that I've had the opportunity to do is mentor people. And when I do mentor people, there is nothing more rewarding than that. But they don't have to be, a direct mimic of who we are, because everyone should really pave their own pathway. And it's great to watch them pave their own pathway, and you give little bits of advice, and then you see yourself going, oh, you know what, that was actually great advice. Maybe I should take that on myself. And you find yourself even evolving as a leader and understanding, hey, this is what I want them to do, but I need to put my actions into motion too, and not just say it.
So advice for the next generation, Kari, what's one thing you wish more leaders in this space would do differently?
Oh, let's see. There's a lot of things we could probably all do differently. One thing I would say is we got to understand how revenue cycle all ticks and ties, because it's not just a, sit here and delegate and direct. It's really understanding how it ticks and ties, how we affect the overall patient experience. And before you know it, I mean, you could be in a large organization, have several different peers you're working with, and you're doing it all your own way, but everything you're doing is working against each other. And you may not even know that. And it's all about how do we make this the smoothest possible experience for the patient, collect for the client, grow the
Right.
organization, but also work together cohesively. So I would say we have to be very proactive, but you have to be willing to adapt. You have to be willing to hear other people's thoughts and go, you know what, I didn't think about that. That probably is a great way to look at that. And then you have to be aware of the processes you put in place and make other departments aware of it, right? If you're not meeting and you're not having regular performance conversations with other departments,
Yeah.
you're not going to capitalize on the gains that you think you will, because you may be working against each other inadvertently.
Open-mindedness and communication, I
Yeah.
think, goes a long way for all of us. So Kari, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a really insightful conversation. And I think anyone out there building or leading teams in RCM is going to walk away with something they can use right now. And to our listeners, if this episode resonated with you, share it with a colleague, subscribe to the show, and stay connected with us at Claims Theory. We've got more great guests lined up, and we're just getting started. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, however you choose to digest them. Thanks, everyone.